Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem.
Hi everyone, in this week's video we're going to be discussing flour. Flour is a common staple in every household, used to make numerous food items that we enjoy on a daily basis. What may not be as well known is that sometimes flour comes with infestations. Generally speaking, the minhag in Eretz Yisrael is to sift one's flour before using it, and in America one should certainly be in touch with his rav to determine whether such a minhag or chiyuv exists. Generally speaking, the infestations in flour are various types of beetles, moths, and book lice that are generally found in many other grain and cereal products and generally can be found in storage. Now let's take a look at some of the infestations, and then Be'ezras Hashem we'll discuss how to properly sift one's flour. So here we have the lesser grain borer, and here we have a rice weevil. There might be several different types of weevils that infest rice. Here is a sawtooth beetle. You can see just under its head there's a little saw-like structure. Here is a red flour beetle, and its very similar cousin, the confused flour beetle. And here is a species of beetle. There are a few different types that all look very, very much the same. It's called a rusted grain beetle. Now, those are the beetles that will be in the flour. What might fall in the flour from the outside is a book louse that, as you can see here, tends to be on the paper packages around the glue. This was a lab test that I received from a major bakery in Jerusalem. I received this batch to check their silos, which seemed to have had an infestation, and from the about 1.5 pounds of flour that I checked that was from their sifter, there was an incredibly large infestation, as you can see here. We're talking about hundreds upon hundreds of bugs in a very small amount of flour. And this was just what what you're seeing now is just what I was able to pull out. Here is the rest of the pile, and this is after it went through the sifter, my sifter, at home. And again, there were hundreds upon hundreds of beetles. These are the rusty grain beetles that were left over after I poured everything out of my sifter. They just grabbed onto the sifter mesh and didn't let go. And this is them. Now we can see another sawtooth beetle in flour. And now we're going to see what the beetles begin as, which is larvae, small little maggot type insects that metamorphosize into fully grown beetles, also moths. And here we have one in the flour. Eventually he is going to fatten himself up until he can metamorphosize himself. So now that we've seen the infestations, let's discuss how to properly sift one's flour. Generally speaking, one wants to get a sifter that is of 70 mesh, which is the equivalent of 210 micron holes, or 0.21 millimeters. There are those who hold that a 60 mesh, which is 250 microns, and 0.25 millimeters would also be sufficient. Anything less than that, anything from 50 mesh and on, is already going to let bugs through. One thing that is very important to know about sifting one's flour is that there are eggs in the flour, and those eggs will almost always go through the sifter because they're extremely small. There are no real sifters that will stop the eggs from getting through, as anything smaller won't allow the flour itself to get through. Therefore, if one stores his sifted flour in conditions that are conducive to further development of insects from the eggs, then one has not really accomplished anything by sifting his flour. Therefore, it is critical that a person store open bags of sifted flour in their refrigerator, as that will preclude any further development of insects. Also, it is extremely important that after one sifts his flour, one should clean his sifter thoroughly, as many times eggs stick to the mesh of the sifter, and the eggs will develop into bugs, and unnoticed by the person sifting will fall into his supposedly clean sifted flour. Another option that is relatively new is to buy pre-sifted flour. Pre-sifted flour has no problems as far as eggs because they are filled with gases that preclude any development. However, when they are opened, new infestations can occur, and therefore when one opens such a bag of flour, one should store it in the refrigerator. Be'ezras Hashem, with the proper sifter and the proper understanding of how to store our flour, we should be zeiche to eat our bread, our cakes, and our cookies the way the Ribono Shel Olam intended.